guys, today I want to show you the pelvis reflex in a little bit more detail. We know that the pelvis is in the heels of the foot as a reflex, and both feet together would be the entire body. Do you mind putting both your feet together? So if I bring this little pelvis model up to the feet like this, what we can see is that the pelvis are the two hip bones joined by the sacrum at the back, and it creates this pelvic bowl. And so there are different parts of the pelvis, ilium, ischium, and pubis. And now all of those would be represented in each foot at the pelvis if we decided to break it down into really smaller parts and smaller reflexes. So if you keep this image in mind, what this means is that half of the sacrum is going to be on the right foot, half of the sacrum is going to be on the left foot as they reflect for the actual sacrum in the body down to the feet as reflexes, and then one entire innominate bone or hip bone on each side. So if I remove this, what I want us to remember is that when we are working on hip reflexes for any hip problem, don't forget to address the pelvis, because that's going to have an interplay with what you're doing for the body, asking it to heal what it can heal. So when you're working on the pelvis, typically what we would do is just go up and across using our caterpillar, up and across doing a typical grid pattern. But really imagine now the zones and imagine the body parts. Imagine that the pelvis is the sacrum and an entire hip bone. And then when you're working it very specifically for hip, think of your other hip reflexes and how they might relate to that. The medial hip reflex is also a reflex for the SI joint. The lateral hip reflex on the other side around the other malleolus or the other ankle bone is the lateral hip. That relates to things like hip replacement. It's where the femur actually connects to the pelvis. But remember that at the pelvis, you've got very specific sites you can also work. So when you go back into rework reflexes, specifically helping hip problems, then you can focus on whether you're working more medial or closer to the sacrum, or whether you're working more lateral and closer to the other lateral hip, or where the actual femur connects. And you can also work on the inside of the pelvis for things like attachments for the iliopsoas muscle, or anything involved in the stress response, or a tight sacrum or a tailbone injury. So you can actually work the pelvis very specifically for the sacrum and the hip bone that each side also represents.